Question number 5. Lately, I have been very impatient and irritated with long queues, slow counter service. How can I continue to tell myself to remain calm and relax? Now, I have answered this question briefly before by text, but today I'm going to give you a more thorough explanation and answer to this question. Basically, the main part of this question is, how can I continue to tell myself to remain calm, remain cool and relax? So it's really about staying calm and becoming relaxed. And the technique that the Buddha advocated for this practice is actually commonly called mindfulness. So it's really the practice of satipatthana, the 4 focuses of introspection. So today we're going to take a look at these 4 focuses of introspection from a very practical point of view. Right. Now, the person who asked this question basically was pointing out that he was feeling impatient and irritated. So impatience and irritations were the emotional states that he was experiencing. And of course, that would trigger you to behave in a way that may be unwholesome or may not be helpful to the situation. So basically, impatience and irritation are the reactions to emotional arousals. That means the person had experienced some kind of emotional arousals of fear and anxiety. You see, this is something that happens to everybody. Everything we go through in life, every day, every single one of us, without exception, is going to encounter a situation that arouses our emotion. And in most cases, the most frightening, the most impactful reactions or arousals would be arousal of fear and anxiety, because this has its roots in evolution. Right, so let me explain further. We experience fear and anxiety when we perceive a situation as a threat or a conflict to our survival. So the key here is survival. See, we have this natural tendency, evolved over millions of years, to want to survive. So this survival instinct. And because of our ability to cope with that we became the surviving species. Otherwise, we would be wiped out. Species that are not able to cope with threats and conflicts in order to help them to survive, they are gone, they are wiped out, right? So all animals that have survived are those who cope well with 4 things. And these are the 4 universal across all animals. Finding food. Now, no food, you starve to death. Avoiding harm. Well, if your predator or something more powerful than you wants to harm you and you can't avoid that, you will be dead and your species could be wiped out. And sadly, human beings are wiping out a lot of other species because of this. Right? Thirdly, resting and recuperating. This is very important. If we don't sleep, lack of sleep can cause a person to die. If a person is without sleep for many days on end, continuously, that person may die, get a heart attack or something. Finally, reproductivity, the ability to reproduce. Now, if we don't reproduce, we will have no next generation. Without next generation, our species will be wiped out. So these are the 4 universal things that we need to be able to cope with in order for the survival of the species. Finding food, avoiding harm, resting and recuperating, and reproduction. Right? So all animal species that survive today are able to do this. Those who are no longer able to do this, or those who get threatened, like some species are being threatened by human existence, they could be wiped out. Right? Unfortunately, human beings are quite nasty here. The human species has done a lot of things to wipe out so many other species. So the key here with respect to this question is resting and recuperating. So one of the important things is that if we are constantly on the edge of emotional excitement, emotional arousals, constantly experiencing fear and anxiety non-stop and not able to pause and relax, not able to rest and sleep, we would not survive. So the resting and recuperating is the key with respect to this question here. So if you're feeling impatient and irritated, you got to learn how to relax and recover from it. So relaxation is resting, and recovering from it is recuperating. So this is the key. And the practice of Satipatthana can help in resting and recuperating. So resting and recuperating come from the ability to stay calm and relax. That means when our emotions are aroused and we feel agitated, we are able to stay calm and able to relax, find the opportunity, create the conditions to relax in the face of threats and conflicts. If we can't deal with threats and conflicts, our species will be wiped out. So dealing with threats and conflicts, we've got to learn how to stay calm and relaxed. So how can we cultivate the ability to stay calm and relax? Well, the Buddha advocated the practice of what we commonly call mindfulness, but I'm going to point out that Bhante Punnaji calls it differently. He calls it the 4 focuses of introspection. So basically, Bhante Punnaji has taught us to cultivate this introspective attention, the 4 focuses of introspection, so that we become aware, conscious and aware of what goes on inside us. You see, whether you survive or not survive, one thing is to prevent external threat from wiping you out, but another thing is to be able to rest and recuperate, and that is how we can deal with it inside us. So the first thing is to be aware of what's happening to us, what goes on inside us, and not to be disturbed just by what goes on outside. So here, I'm not talking about life-threatening situation, because if you are faced with a life-threatening situation, you have to deal with that threatening situation. But here we're talking about going through normal daily activity, and then you feel agitated, you feel impatient, you feel irritated. So now the solution is to learn how to bring your attention inwards, to be aware of what goes on inside, so that you're able to deal with this impatience and this irritation. Right? So this is called introspective attention, which commonly translated as mindfulness. This is the practice of Satipatthana. Introspective attention is to observe how we are affected by things going on outside. So it's to observe what goes on inside and to be aware. Then we can deal with ourselves. We can learn to rest and recuperate. This is the only way. You cannot learn to rest and recuperate by getting distracted by what goes on outside. You've got to learn how to bring your attention inwards. Think about it. Every night you go to sleep, right? If you are paying attention on what's going on outside, you hear some sound from the neighbor, you hear some sound coming from the road. Now, if you start to pay too much attention to what goes on in another house nearby or on the road somewhere out there, all these sounds, traffic sounds, you can't sleep. How can you sleep? The only way you can sleep is to bring your attention inwards. And one of the easy way to get to sleep is then to observe your breathing. The anapanasati, observing your breathing, gradually it will be able to put you to sleep if you just allow yourself to rest and not get distracted by what goes on outside. So this is the key. Because when something goes on outside is affecting us, there are 4 ways it alerts us. The first telltale sign, the first signal we get is activities in the body, bodily reaction. And this is the effect of stress hormones, because when something happens, our mind perceives it as a threat. Then we become experiencing anxiety. And then the amygdala will trigger a release of hormones, causing our body to become tensed. So we have to be aware of this activity in the body. And this is called kayanupassana. So observing the activity in the body. So this cultivation is called kayanupassana. So we're going to touch on the cultivation in a moment. So this is the first telltale sign that the body has reacted because of the effects of hormones, causing tensions in the body. Then the second telltale sign is that these tensions in the body causes the organs to react because of the hormones. So the hormones causes various organs to react, and this leads to a lot of discomfort in the body and having unpleasant feelings. So we need to be aware what unpleasant feelings is arising. Just observe it, not analyze, just observe and be aware that it is arising. And you can deal with it. If you are aware of it, you can deal with it by slowing down your breathing and so on. So this awareness is the cultivation of Vedananupasana, right? So this is the second part of the cultivation. So let's take a look at what Bhante Punanji says about Kayanupasana and Vedananupasana.
And introspection means what are we going to look at when we turn inward? There are only 4 things to look at. One is to look at the body. Now when we say looking at the body, we begin to think that looking at the body is to use the eyes to look at the body. That is all wrong. That is looking at something outside. That is not looking at inside. To look at the body is not with our eyes, but with our mind. Close your eyes and look at the body. That means you are looking not with your eyes, but with your mind. Focus your attention on the body. You can close your eyes and focus your attention on the body. And when you focus your attention on the body, what you observe is movement in the body, tension in the body. You can become aware of tensions in the body and movements in the body. Now, for example, if you open your eyes and look at something, and you see that it is something pleasant, what happens to your body? That is the important thing. And your body will begin to move. The moment you dislike something that you see, again the body will begin to move. It is that movement of the body that is important to observe, but not by looking with your eyes, but with your mind. Look at the body. And then, how the body feels. Is it comfortable or uncomfortable? That means if there is tension in the body, it becomes uncomfortable. If the body is relaxed, it's comfortable. So you can look at the body in terms of movements and tensions, and also feel whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable. So that is what is called Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana. Kayanupassana is to become aware of the body, and Vedananupassana is become aware whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable.
The practice of Kayanupasana and Vedananupasana. Realize that something has happened to the body, realize that there are sensations disturbing you and making you feel uncomfortable. So observing the body, changes in the body and the feelings and sensations. Then all that leads to emotional arousal. So what happens is this tension and discomfort, they begin to arouse emotion. And that is when you begin to feel irritated and impatient. So this feeling of irritation and impatience is the emotional arousal, right? And you must learn to be aware, because when you are aware of emotional arousal, you can deal with it. You see, all of us, we have difficulty being aware of emotional arousal. And if we're not aware that our emotions are being aroused, then emotions actually carry on and take control. And then we begin to behave in very emotional ways. So this awareness of emotional arousal is important. Realize that now your emotional states are changing, your mood and temperament are changing. This is the awareness that is cultivated with Chittanupassana, observing these changes in your emotional states. And because of emotional arousal, your mind gets disturbed. So when emotions are aroused, the mind becomes unstable. And it triggers all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of unwholesome thoughts. And this awareness is the cultivation of Dhammanupassana. Now, it's very important, this word Dhammanupassana. A lot of people translated Dhammanupassana is to be aware of Dhamma, the Buddha Dhamma. Actually, in this case, this word Dhamma, Pali is a very strange, interesting language. Every word may have more than one meaning depending on the context. So here, in this context, the word Dhamma is referring to thoughts, experiences, right? Thinking. So this is really Dhamma, concepts. When your mind begins to create a concept, or your mind begins to think of something, that process of thinking, that arising of the thoughts, that is really Dhamma. And that is experience, a kind of experience, mental experience. So here, Dhamma means that, not the Buddha Dhamma, not talking about the Four Noble Truths and so on. So this is the cultivation of being aware that your thoughts are arising. And this is where these thoughts motivate you and drive you to behave either in a good way or in a bad way, depending what kind of thoughts. So therefore, it's important to realize that these thoughts are actually causing you to behave. And this behavior is your karma. So being aware of these things can help you manage and help you calm and settle and make peace with your karma. Otherwise, you'll be behaving in unwholesome ways. You're creating bad karma. Right? This is very important. Right? You're creating bad karma because of these thoughts arising, driving you to behave in such a way. So when you have unwholesome thoughts, your behavior may become erratic and unwholesome, and that you are creating negative karma. You're creating bad karma. Therefore, if you are aware negative thoughts are arising, say to yourself, no, this is not good. Don't do this. This is harmful to the other person. It may also cause a problem with our relationships. So don't do that. So if you warn yourself there, you won't end up behaving in unwholesome and erratic manner. So now let's listen to Bhante Punnaji explain these two. The Chittanupassana, awareness of emotional states arising, and Dhammanupassana, awareness of thoughts and concepts. Okay.
Then another thing that you can observe while looking within is whether your emotions are excited or not. If you are angry, you can observe in your body whether you are angry or whether you are unhappy or whether you are frightened or whether you are worried. Whatever the emotional agitation, by closing your eyes, you can still become aware inside. That is called Chittanupassana, becoming aware of the mood. Chitta is the mood. Then the next thing is what is called Dhammanupassana. Dhamma is, of course, we use the word Dhamma to refer to the teachings of the Buddha. But here Dhamma is not teachings of the Buddha. Dhamma is simply the thought in the mind. What are you thinking? What kind of thought arises in your mind? Are you thinking of what happened yesterday, or what is going to happen tomorrow, or what is happening now? If you are thinking of something, that is Dhamma. Very important to understand that Dhamma there means the thought in the mind. So those are the four things that you can become aware of when we do introspection. Becoming aware of the body, becoming aware of how the body feels, becoming aware of the emotional state, or becoming aware of the thoughts in the mind. That is satipatthana, introspection. Now when that has been practicing, you have to practice it not just 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even 1 hour. You have to practice that 24 hours. That is the important thing.
So you heard Bhante say you got to practice these 4 types of pasanas 24 hours. It's not something you just do it once or do it from time to time. Because once you continuously practice this and you are constantly aware of how what goes on out there is affecting your body, your feelings, your emotions, and your thinking, you will be able to deal with situations in very intelligent and wise way. Because when you become aware, your response will be rational, no longer emotional, no longer behaving like an animal. Because when you behave emotionally, you're behaving like any other animals, because animals always behave in emotional ways. So it's very important. This is really a cultivating consciousness. Now, when we talk about the practice of satipatthana, this is actually part of the Eightfold Way. I will be answering this connection in the third questions later on. So up to now, we're just talking about the basic practice of satipatthana. So these are the 4 focuses of introspection. First, it is the body, where we observe the physical manifestation of reactions in the body, how the body changes, how the heart beats faster, how we feel blood pressure rising, and how our voice deepens, and how our body is trembling and shaking and so on. So that's a bodily reaction. Then the second one is observing the manifestation of sensations and feelings in the body that lead to unpleasant feelings or pleasant feelings. So this is also applicable to getting aroused by lust and greed. Something makes you feel lustful. Right? When you are aware that you are getting lustful, you can deal with it. Otherwise, you will succumb to the emotions of lust, emotions of greed, then you will behave in very lustful, greedy, unwholesome ways. So it's also both either pleasurable or unpleasant or unpleasurable. So be aware that these feelings are arising and it arouses your emotions, and then you go into various emotional states and your mood and your temperament begin to change. Mood basically refers to your feeling of whether you like something, you want more of it, right? So it's really your intention, right? Your urge. Temperament is your reaction, your urge to react. Mood is your feeling about something, whether you want more of it or you don't want it, you want to get rid of it, you hate it or what. So that's mood. And then when you start to take action to go after what you lust and to try to get rid of what you hate, that is your temperament, the urge to react. So you have to be aware of that. Observe the manifestation of these emotional excitements of mood and temperament, and the arousal of your emotional states, which is impatience, irritation, agitation, fear, anger, and so on. Right? And finally, of course, they produce thoughts in your mind. Right? Now, later on, I will also be explaining in the next question about sankhara, how thoughts are being constructed in the mind. That's part of the sankhara. And Bhante actually explained that, so I'm going to show you later on. So this is creating concepts in the mind, and therefore you're going to learn how to observe these concepts. Concepts are nothing but thoughts and ideas, right? So thoughts and concepts. And these are really how you interpret the circumstances. If you observe something, if you experience something you think is good for you, then of course you have a concept that it is something that you want. Now, if it is something that you feel is not good for you, then your concept of that experience is you don't want it. So basically, it's the way you interpret the circumstances. Is it something you want? Is it something you don't want? What are you going to do about it? Right? So these are thoughts that are arising, creating thoughts and concepts and ideas and choices. Right? So this is really Dhammanupassana. So these are the four. Realize the first two are actually dealing with bodily activity, and the next two are dealing with the mental activity, psychological. One is physiological, right? So body and feelings are physiological, and affection and conception, these are psychological, right? Mental activity. So these are the four foundations. So the four focuses of introspection are the cultivation of these four satipatthanas. So this is really the practice of satipatthana. So if you want to do well in this area, if you want to cultivate and develop this ability, then you should attend meditation retreats centered around satipatthana. So there are people who conduct meditation retreat with very specific themes or very specific objective. So there could be some satipatthana meditation retreats. There are quite a few in the past. Of course, ever since March last year, all retreats have been suspended because of the COVID coronavirus pandemic. There are no more retreats. But now in Malaysia, the government has officially allowed temples and churches or religious organizations to begin to conduct live in-person sessions. But all the Buddhist temples I have spoken to so far are reluctant to open up. So I guess we are going to wait for the relaxation of the quarantine and pandemic restrictions. Maybe later on, there will be retreats. But meanwhile, there are online retreats. So you can hunt for them, see if there are any online retreats on Satipatthana, and then join them and learn something and practice. Right? So the solution is to understand and practice. There are two parts, right? To understand what it is and how it works, and then to actually try it out, do it. You know, the theory is not good enough. You have to practice. So therefore, you can cultivate these four focuses of introspective attention. And therefore, cultivating these four focuses of introspection will train you to become aware how emotions are aroused, and then you are able to take control of your behavior. So in other words, you can now behave in a wholesome, peaceful, and harmonious way. And this is really the cultivation of sila, right? Virtuous morality, sila. Right? So you have to learn and practice that so that you can learn to remain conscious and rational at all times, because when you're able to do that, when you are aware of your emotional arising, your conscious, rational mind takes control, not your emotional mind. So you're no longer subject to your emotions taking control. You are now able to control your behavior consciously and in a rational way. And you can easily decide on wholesome responses to all circumstances. So when you get irritated and you get excited and you get anxious and you get impatient, then be aware of all that, and then you are able to do something about it. And Bhante Punaji has also taught us, when you become aware of your emotions, the emotional arousal will subside, which is true. If you start to feel impatient and you're aware, oh, I'm feeling impatient, you're aware that you're becoming impatient, suddenly your level of patience improves. That's what it is. The same when you're feeling anxious, you're feeling anxiety, and then you realize, oh, no, wait, I'm feeling anxious. This thing is causing anxiety. If you are aware of that, your anxiety level will come down. You won't get so anxious, right? So this is important, to remain conscious and rational. So when you do not cultivate introspective awareness, you allow emotions to take control and you react emotionally to circumstances, leading to the whole mass of suffering that you seem to experience. You know, we experience suffering not because they just happen to us. we experience suffering because of the way we react. Very important to realize that. Right? This is also creating good karma by remaining conscious and rational. Your actions are wholesome and harmonious and peaceful. You are actually behaving in a virtuous way, and therefore you are creating good karma for yourself. Right? This is very helpful to know that.